Hi folks, it is Thibaut Van Dam here with another YouTube video, and for those of you who are not familiar with my channel, I am a DIY singer-songwriter and also guitar tutor based in Southeast London. Today I'm very excited to be continuing my series about practical guitar and music theory, specifically with lesson 28, where I'm going to be analyzing a song using all the theory we've talked about on this channel. This is something I've been working on and working towards on this channel for a long time now. The goal is really simple: to be able to use things like the circle of fifths, the harmonized major scale, our understanding of triads and the chromatic scale, and all this information, we're going to put it to use to try to make sense of a song. And that's kind of, it sounds like the goal. The goal is that, to understand music in a more technical way and to be able then to let that be inspiration for our own songwriting. Now, there are a lot of unusual things that can happen in music and music theory. Stuff I basically dub weird, the weird stuff. Weird stuff is quite diverse. There's no limit to how much weird stuff can really exist, musically speaking. But what's so interesting about the song we're looking at today, Maggie by Rod Stewart, is that it doesn't do really anything that weird. It stays within its key signature. There are no secondary dominants, there are no borrowed chords, there's no chromatic mediants. There's nothing really weird that shakes things up, and yet the song was greatly successful, very popular, and seemed to say a message that people connected to. This is to demonstrate a lot of things. Firstly, that great songwriting can happen within one key signature, that weird stuff doesn't need to happen. It is, in fact, a challenge to write meaningful music in one key. I think that that is an interesting thing already, because as soon as theory starts getting struck as kind of a thing to learn and how it can improve songwriting, there's this kind of abandonment to the fundamentals of songwriting and the ideas of functional harmony as they relate to the idea of just a singular key signature. And yet those ideas seem to always be important, especially as things start to get weird. The other reason why I like to use this song is probably the opening song. It's something I show a lot of my students, is because it goes through a lot of the cage chords. Throughout this video, we'll be seeing chords like the G major chord, D major, and A major chord. Those are chords that appeared in the cage system, and I made a video about those chords specifically, but also about the cage system in general. So this is a great starting song to learning chords practically. And then the big reason, which I really like about this song in particular, is that it really does use creative ideas of songwriting, whether it was conscious to Rod Stewart or not, that actually tell a story. And I think that this is really interesting, and I'm very excited to get into it. If this sounds interesting to you, please consider liking the video. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It is the best way to stay in the loop. It, of course, motivates me to keep making content like this. And thank you to everyone that does subscribe. It really does mean a lot. I remember when I didn't even have 100 subscribers, and when I checked recently, I have over 250. That really does mean a lot. I was sort of surprised, actually. I was like, whoa, I thought I only had like 170 or something. But no, I have more than that, and I feel great about it, and it really does mean a lot. It's why I'm here right now. So let's go ahead and get into it. Moving on, we are going to want a notebook. You're going to want a notebook to write things in some kind of a pen, and let's get into it. So there's a nice intro to this song. We are not going to be playing that, although maybe in the future we'll look at it, just because it explores interesting ideas of harmony and sentiment and stuff like that in songwriting. But the way that I'll do this, and this is my method of analyzing things using ideas like the circle of fifths, and if I hadn't said it already, you need to know what the circle of fifths is. That was my last video that I made, or maybe the second to last video. Check it out. If you don't know it though, I will be going over that idea again. But you need to know your rudiments of theory. At this point, I would like to say that the prerequisites to understanding these types of videos is to know all the stuff I've already talked about, like all the previous 27 lessons. But I know that sounds like a lot, but actually, but it is not, in fact, because if that's all it is for being able to analyze any song in Western music, at least, that's pretty good if you ask me. Okay, anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. We have this first chord, A major, G major, and then D major. Wake up, Maggie, I think I got something to say to you. This is our main sort of verse. It's late September and I really should be back at school. Cool. So we've already identified 3 major chords. This is actually a big deal. This offers tons of information as far as songwriting goes. This is because in any given major scale, and when we harmonize that major scale, we only have 3 major chords available to us. Every major scale only has 3 chords in it. So either one of two things is happening right now. Either we have identified our tonal center because those 3 chords are consecutive on the circle of fifths and that they establish a key signature because there is a 1, a 4, and a 5 all closely linked, or one of those chords is weird and we have yet more information to find out to decide what's going on. So let's write those chords down. We have our verse, including the chords A, G, and D. It's worth pointing out the order of the chords is important. Music is experienced in a time-related way. We heard something first, then we heard something second. It's important that we take note of what was first, second, and third, chronologically speaking. Okay, the next thing I would say is because we have identified 3 major chords, usually that's my sign to go right into the circle of fifths, actually. Because as soon as there are 3 major chords that are defined for the listener, for me as the musician and the songwriter, we can start to create borders. We can start to say, well, this is either a key or it is not. And so let's do that. Now, there are mnemonic phrases to the circle of fifths. So this is the next sort of step. Identify the circle of fifths. Now, you might not need the whole circle of fifths in this song, but always having the entire circle of fifths written up, at least the outer circle of fifths, is unbelievably useful. And this is because eventually you might want to do something weird and you'll want to see the visual representation of the keys. And you want to say, oh, if I wanted to do something weird, I could do that. And this thing is not native to the key. It's a tool. So you want to exercise writing the entire thing out. Starting at what would be 11 o'clock on a clock, we're going to write F for fat, then C for Caroline, then G for gets, then D for drunk, then A for and, then E for eats, then B for butter, and then F for flies, which taste sharp. And that reminds us that the F is in fact sharp. So this is what we have. We have fat Caroline gets drunk and eats butter, flies which taste sharp. Don't forget the sharp. Okay. Then going counterclockwise, I will say that was not my original idea. Someone else had that, although I did do the sharp thing. So, okay. But my modest contribution to the circle of fifths, as far as mnemonic phrases go, from the F, that same F we started on, we're going to go counterclockwise and write flat bead, B-E-A-D. And we say the word flat to remind us that each of those notes that followed the F are in fact flat. So B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, flat bead. I like to think that that is easy enough to remember. So this is what our circle of fifths looks like. We have flat bead, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and then fat Caroline gets drunk and eats butter, flies, which taste sharp. Great. At the moment, we only really need the outer ring because we're working with the major chords, but we will come to discover there is that inner ring that shows us the relative minor chords of all the outer major chords. So we see 3 chords, the 3 major chords, A, G, and D. We'll start by circling A. Now, when we look at that circle of fifths, we'll see that A appears in between D and D. And if we hadn't played anything else at this point in the song, if we just played A, if this was our 1, because that's what we're trying to identify here, this was the 1, then this is the 4, D is the 4, and E is the 5. And this feels cozy, this feels comfortable, this is something that when we hear it, we say, this makes sense. And there are expectations of tension and resolve are fulfilled very easily here. But we don't actually see that happen. The first next thing we see, or the second thing we see, rather, I guess, the first next thing we see is A, G. What? That is neither D nor E. Let's circle G and figure out where it is on the circle of fifths. So this is already coming across as quite different and original. So original songwriting can be achieved in a single key. We have A, G. It looks like a big jump. And the only thing that would tie these 2 chords together is D. And what do we see, lo and behold, is D, in fact. So let's circle the D then. So we've circled D, and we now can identify our key to be D major. And this is a surprise to us because we would have expected to be an A at the beginning, But when we heard G and then D, it's like a reversal of function, basically. We've seen the subdominant get used as a dominant to bring us back into one. So in a way, we kind of slip into the one. It's quite interesting. Let's move forward then and talk about the pre-chorus. Pre-chorus. The pre-chorus goes like this. I know I keep you amused, D, but I G feel I'm being used, A. Oh, E minor, F sharp minor, any more E minor, D sus2. Okay, so let's write down those chords and then try to make sense of that. The pre-chorus includes the following chords. We have G, D, G, A, E minor, F sharp minor, E minor, D sus2, which only happens for 1/8 note at the end of the pre-chorus, in between the pre-chorus and the chorus. That was a clever chord, and we'll talk about that in a sec. So we have G again, we have D, we have A. So all the chords we already had circled before, G, D, and A, we're circling them again. So this is actually really, really positive. This is reinforcing the idea that we were maybe right, that there's a good chance, an increasingly good chance, that we are certainly in the key of D major. This is because we are, again, seeing these chords getting circled. G, we're seeing G get circled. We're seeing D get circled. We're seeing G again and then A. So everything we saw here, we're seeing again there. But now we're turning our attention to the relative minors. So the relative minors, you can solve for by using the mnemonic phrases from before, but by starting at a different point, basically. So you'll have to start at a different point on the circle of fifths, but remembering the phrases Caroline gets drunk, Fat Caroline gets drunk and eats butterflies, and flat bead. It is possible, you can do it that way, but I think it makes more sense to identify your relative minor chords physically. And this is because actually what makes a relative minor chord relative is the fact that it shares 2 of the 3 components of the parent major chord in common. So not only will they sound sort of similar, you should be able to hear usually relative major and minor chords, but physically speaking on the guitar, the notes are actually kept in the same spot sometimes, at least in 2 of those occasions. So let me show you what those occasions are. Starting with the G major chord. G major, the relative minor of G major is E minor. And notice how when I play G major, I don't even lift up my middle finger. I reposition my ring finger to be the 2nd fret of the D string, which plays another E. And let's identify the notes now actually. G, B, and D. G, B, D. When we play E minor though, we have E, B, E, and G. If we played E minor as a minor 7th chord, which would be E, B, D, and G, we are actually playing another G major, in fact. When you play the minor 7th, the relative minor 7th of a major chord, you actually play the major chord within the minor chord, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but this is a major chord. That is the G major chord, just an inversion of it. And when we voice the E underneath, it becomes the E minor 7 because it recontextualizes each of those intervals according to E. So underneath G, we'll write E minor. And let's do the same with D. So D again, D, and then B minor 7. This looks quite a bit like D. A lot of notes kept in the same spot. And like I said before, the B minor 7 includes the entirety of the major parent major chord. This includes D major, but is voiced under the minor, under the guise of being B minor. So underneath D, we'll write B minor, then A. The way I remember A is because A looks a little bit like a partial bar. And so I remember to bar and play F sharp minor. When I play F sharp minor as the 7th, the entirety of A major is in that chord. Yep. So underneath A, we'll write down F sharp minor, and let's solve for the 7. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I wanted to show an easy way to remember how to identify your 7 chord. So if you remember the actual major scale, the major scale goes root, whatever that note is, a whole step from that, a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then that last half step takes you up to your tonic, right? So in practice, D major, that is the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's called the leading tone because it makes us want to go 7, 1, where we started. And it feels very good to go back there. A new type, a different type of tension, a bit like the dominant, actually. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that by identifying your tonic, if you flatten it by a semitone, that tells you the root of the 7th scale degree, and therefore, well, rather, it tells you the 7th scale degree, but it also will therefore tell you the root of the harmonized major 7 chord. In this case, the diminished 7 chord, which is C sharp diminished. And where does it go? Where does C sharp diminished go? C sharp diminished goes underneath E. It goes here, right underneath E. And this is because the 5 of the 5, the relative minor of the 5 of 5 is the 7. It's a bit weird to think about, but this is also where we get that symbol, or that rather the cutout that I drew before of the school bus. I think the school bus is a good visualization. It looks a bit like a school bus to me. But this is our 7. It's a bit awkward, but the reason why I thought it made sense to include this is because it is thorough and because the 7 is an incredibly useful chord in any given key signature. So great. We have now identified the 7 chords that make up our D major key. Now, the next thing to do is to affiliate Roman numerals with each of those so that we can eventually abstract them to function, functional harmony, harmonic function, right? We're trying to work out the idea of the tonic. What is operating like the home? What is operating like the subdominant? What is operating like the dominant? What is creating tension, and where's the storytelling going here? And actually, because I'm talking about it, the analogy I like to give is that home, the 1, or its relative minor, that the 1 is like my bedroom. I rent out this room. The 1 is like my bedroom. And the easiest way to leave my bedroom is to go through the bedroom door, which is in this case the 4 chord. And then the easiest way to leave this house, which is the key, is to go through the front door, which is the 5. And that the relative minors that we just solved for, that those are all basically relative minor counterparts of those major concepts. So I'll just sort of exhibit really quick. But if you can imagine, in the key of D, this is my bedroom and everything feels fine. And then when I play the relative minor of this is my bedroom and I'm feeling alone and kind of weird. This is what we're talking about. Same ideas can be applied to the bedroom door, even. So this is my bedroom and I think I'll leave and go do something fun and happy. Or this is my bedroom and I think I'll leave. And it's sad and kind of unfortunate that I have to go out to the hospital to do that sad thing. Same yet again when I think about the front door. That, this is my bedroom and I think I'm going to go out and go to the park. The sun is shining and it actually looks really nice. I'm going to go do that later. That's the major dominant. And then here we have the minor dominant sound. I've got to go out and do something like bury a relative and it's real bitter. And so in a sense, this sense of the minor dominant sound is even more intense than the minor subdominant sound. They work in parallel in terms of magnitude and in terms of their characterization as being minor or major. And you can interpret the minorness and majorness in different ways. So, okay, nice. So now that we've talked about that, let's just go ahead and start affiliating with the Roman numerals so we can start grouping into tonic, subdominant, and dominant function. So the first way to do this is to do it alphabetically, chromatically and alphabetically. Starting from D. D is the 1. We know that because we're in the key of D major. D is the 1. Then we go alphabetically. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and then C sharp. And where did I get these notes specifically from? Well, I got them from here, actually. I started with D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. And this actually creates a physical shape so you could actually remember it as well. Let me see if I can draw it at the same time as I talk about it. We start with D, 1. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, this is the physical pattern to your key signature. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I know that might look a little bit nuts, but it works. And that is how we identify it physically speaking. So you could look at this and say, well, that's a 2 and that's a 3. And you can start looking at this sort of box or the school bus thing and saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The other way to do it is to work alphabetically. So you'd say, well, we started with D. We went up that whole step, right? So D to E. Now, underneath each of these, I'm going to write down numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to show that we actually have the 7 scale degrees. And then underneath that, we are going to apply the Roman numeral formula that we have for the harmonized major key signature, which is major 1, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6, diminished 7. And that's what we have. Now, we're doing this for 2 reasons. One is to start to understand. I'll just leave that for a sec. We're doing this for 2 reasons. The first is to understand the idea of harmonic function. We're trying to understand functional harmony, rather. In this case, we're trying to see, well, what's the 1? Where does the 1 appear here in the verse? Where does the 1 appear here in the pre-chorus and the chorus and everything else? How are these concepts of home and my bedroom and the front door and my bedroom door, how are they all getting used to tell the story of the song? And what effect is it having to the listener when we hear it? And what do we really take note of as we go through this experience? The other reason why we do this, the Roman numerals, the reason we do that is so we can actually abstract. So if we don't like the key of D major, that shape, you could rotate all of this to fit into that shape. Or you could rotate the school bus, rather, going backwards or forwards, so that this is the 1, this is the 4, that's the 5. So we could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 right here. See, so you could actually start to take the cadences once we change them into Roman numerals and play the same song in a different key. This is the function of the cage system. This is the function of the guitar. This is the function of actually not even the guitar, but all of the instruments. Now, on the guitar, we have the advantage of the fact that it's a lot easier to do key changes like this, physically speaking. Piano, all the chords have different shapes. But on guitar, you could use the idea of the shapes to actually, to your advantage. You could start playing this and just moving it around willy-nilly. And I might do that at the end if I have time. So let's go back to the verse and evaluate what's going on. So we see A. A is the 5 chord, the dominant chord. So we have 5, then we have 4, then we have 1. So A, G, D, 5, 4, 1. This is weird. I said before it was weird because when we first saw A, we thought we might see E and D. We saw D in the end, but we never saw E. But we might have. And if F later in the song we started seeing a whole bunch of E, we might actually be in the key of A, and we might have to reevaluate the entire key we're in. Or we might find we're in actually 2 keys, that we have 2 keys going on at the same time. So here we have A, G, and D, 5, 4, 1. So that's already pretty left field because we're starting from a place of tension, dominance. When we think about what that actually means with the bedroom home analogy, it's basically like saying the following. I'm at the front door and I'm in my bedroom door and now I'm in my bed. That's what was kind of being said in my mind. That's how I translate this narrative. And so that archetype of narrative can be applied here into the lyrics. We can say, wake up, Maggie, I think I've got something to say to you. It's almost like he's walked into the bedroom to say this to Maggie, actually. So that's kind of what's interesting, I think, is that there are parallels between the chords and the lyrics and the storytelling about what's actually going on. We actually see this again even more in the pre-chorus. So when we translate the pre-chorus from their chords into their Roman numerals, we have the 4, G, we have D, which is the 1, we have 4 again, which is G, then we have A, which is the 5. So imagine this. I know I keep you amused, but I feel I'm being used. So what does this translate to in terms of the story? It's like, well, it's the bedroom door and the bed, and the bedroom door and the front door. And the 5 usually exists to tell us that there's going to be more. The thing that we're going to get more of here is that the pre-chorus is not yet done, actually. Oh, Maggie, I couldn't have tried anymore. I feel like in storytelling, what's happening here is there's this sad element going on. And we hear that in the words, like, I couldn't have tried anymore. That sounds sad. This also conveys that. And in a way, what's happening is we're having subdominant, minor subdominant function, kind of sad bedroom door, and couldn't have tried anymore. It's like sad bedroom door, sad front door, sad bedroom door. D sus2. Let's see what's going on here with the D sus2. So what we had just there, by the way, was minor 2, minor 3, minor 2 again. And in terms of function, they were like, it was subdominant, dominant, subdominant, but minor renderings of that. So minor subdominant, minor dominant, minor subdominant. And we ended on D sus2. D sus2, what is D sus2? D sus2 is the 1, but we've been prohibited the satisfaction of the 3, the major 3 here. See? And what's going on there? Well, I believe the purpose of that is to tell us, wait, actually, we're not complete. We thought we were going, Maggie, I couldn't have tried anymore. We think we're going home or home. But we don't. We don't allow that yet because there's, in fact, going to be a chorus. And I think in the chorus, this is where the message, the main idea of the song comes out. You led me away from home. And here we go. It's almost as literal as it could be. You led me, you two. This is the subdominant minor chord, the E minor, right? From home, the 5, major 5. So in our chorus, we have 2, 5, and this is repeated 3 times until we resolve on the 1. You led me away from home, just to save you from being alone. You stole my heart, and that's what really hurts. In a sense, that last line is the entirety of the message, the bottom line of this song, which is you stole my heart, and that's what really hurts. If you wanted to abstract the entirety of this song and its message to one singular idea, it would be that line, I think. It would be da, 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 da. And it's this one moment where the 5 finally goes back to its 1, and we say, yes, we finally end up in bed, and we end up in the bedroom, and it feels complete. It doesn't feel suspended, and it doesn't feel like a sad version of this. It feels fine, which is why the song ultimately feels like a happy song and not just a sad one. But there are elements of bittersweetness throughout, for instance, where we see the 2 and the 3 appear, that kind of muddling about. And we see that reflected again later in the chorus. We see the 2 and the 5. And the 2 and the 3 and the 2 and the 5 have a lot in common in the sense that they're both subdominant to dominant functions. So we end up seeing kind of this building of tension, 4, 5, 4, 5, kind of, in this case, 2 to 5. It's building up something. It's as if Rod Stewart can only say one thing to this person. It's like, you stole my heart, and that really hurts, actually. And that's the final takeaway here. And so there is an element of bittersweetness, and somehow it's conveyed in a way where it's also still sort of happy in the end. So this is usually how I go about navigating these kind of songs. I start off by writing the chords that seem apparent to me, and I will point out that I don't always have to play the song before I can start analyzing it. In fact, sometimes I don't even have to write anything at this point because I think about it just so much. But for example, here, I write down the chords, I write down the sections, and when I get really deep into it, I start writing up the circle of fifths, and I start grouping things, and I decide, functionally speaking, what is one way of interpreting what's really going on here. And then to make things a little bit more complex, if you wanted, you can start to look at things like the vocal melody, the notes heard in the vocal melody and how they contribute to the chords as they're being played, which further articulates the meaning of those chords. So it can get very, very complicated very fast. But this is a starting point to analyzing things and finding function. And what's so beautiful, and just to reiterate, like I said at the beginning of the song, what makes the song so effective is that it is only in one key. And still somehow this beautiful story is still told with elements of happiness and bittersweetness. And I think that this is a good modality of going about it and trying to make sense of songwriting. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, remember to like the video. Remember to subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to stay in the loop. And thank you to everyone that does subscribe. And I'll see you at the next one. Ciao for now.